Welcome back, everybody. It's the Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast on Fantasy Pros. I am your host, Scott Bogman. Follow me on the Twitter at Bogman Sports. I'm joined, as always, by my man, Pat Fitzmaurice at Fitz_FF on the Twitter machine. Today, we are going to be talking and fighting about the top 60 wide receivers on our Dynasty list. Looking at our list, Fitzy, not a lot of huge differences, a couple really big ones, but other than that, we're pretty close. We have simpatico. Maybe our thoughts are bleeding into each other a little bit here.
I know, and you're promising the viewers and listeners a fight, Bogman. I think it's just because you're grouchy because it's so cold in Houston right now.
Yes, it is. We're not built for this. Like, we're built for hurricanes and heat waves and all kinds of stuff, but not the cold. 28 degrees is not fun right now. But before we dive into the content, let me tell you guys, this month, if you want a chance to win a signed Aaron Jones Vikings jersey for free, FREE, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on any Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast video, and that's it. Drop a comment below on any Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast video, and you will be entered. We will be announcing a winner right here on this channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when the news is up and to see if you won to claim your prize of the free FREE Aaron Jones signed Viking jersey. You want to get my hands on that, Fitzy. So let's start.
I don't, Boggs. If someone from Wisconsin wins, can they get that in green and gold? Does it have to be a Vikings Aaron Jones
We got the Vikings jersey, man. That's what we got. You got to give it to one of your Vikings buddies. Let's start at the tippy top of the wide receivers here. It's Ja'Marr Chase, it's Justin Jefferson, it's CeeDee Lamb. You know, I feel like if you wanted to readjust those guys into a different way, it's fine, but that's the way we have it. That's the way ECR has it as well. I think it's pretty tough to argue after the year that Chase had that he isn't number one. If you wanted to put him in a tier with Jefferson and Lamb, I'm fine with that. Do you see it as cut and dry here for these three, or is there someone else that belongs in this tier?
No, I think it's cut and dried, Boggs. And I think the only question, if people have these guys on their dynasty teams, they're delighted. And it would probably take a lot to pry any of those three out of someone's hands. The question is, startups, are they all first rounders? And where in the first round are we talking? Like in a super flex, do Chase and Jefferson, in one QB, they're probably 1 and 2.
Right.
And Lamb, good chance Lamb is 3. Maybe you slip Bijan ahead of him. But I don't know, like maybe 5 or 6 quarterbacks ahead of them in super flex startups. Then it's Chase and Jefferson. Does that sound about right to you?
I don't. In a super flex, I don't mind at any point passing up even elite level talent to get the quarterback because we know the math on it, especially if you're in 12 man, you need 3. That's 36 quarterbacks. There's only 32. So you have to make sure you have them. So I don't mind at any point skipping even elite level talent. Last year in flex, I took Joe Burrow over Christian McCaffrey at pick 8 or 9. And I was roundly called an idiot. And it worked out, obviously. CMC got hurt. Joe Burrow had one of his best years ever. And I did not end up winning that league. I think I lost in the second round of the playoffs, but I was in first place in the regular season and had the most points by a wide margin. So to me in Superflex, quarterback takes precedent, but there is a grip of quarterbacks I get down to. And I'm like, I'll take Chase and face the music. So I think you're right. I think it's about 5 or 6 for sure. And then after that, it's just basically your opinion. But these are the tip of the spear in terms of dynasty is these three guys, correct?
Quick test for you. You're sitting at 107 in a super flex startup. Top available quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. Are you taking him or are you considering Chase or Jefferson there?
I'm probably taking Chase.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. And that's, it's a gamble. It is absolutely a gamble, especially because what I did was I took Burrow, and then I think I was the next guy to take a quarterback after that, this is a redraft too, so it's different. But I took Jaden Daniels. I took my risk on Jaden Daniels. That's why I ended up first in that league. Burrow and Daniels, pretty good year. So our consensus, these are the numbers that we're working off, just like when Worm hosts the RB pod, we are doing your and I's ECR is the ranking here. I'll give you the FP ECR, but obviously it's not wholly and completely updated because a lot of people wait until after the draft to put new ranks in. So at number 4, we have Malik Neighbors. Then 5 is Brian Thomas. 6 is Nakua. 7 is Amon-Ra St. Brown. 8 is Nico Collins. 9 is AJ Brown. And 10 is JSN to round up our top 10. The one difference that we have, and it's a decent one, I don't think I see it as very big, but you have Brian Thomas at 4. His FP is 7. I have him at 8. Brian Thomas had an enormous year. 87 catches, 1,282 yards, 10 scores. I find it hard to put him ahead of Amon-Ra, who I have at 5. I have Puka at 6. I have Nico at 7. Now, Puka and Nico have missed time, so I understand if there's an injury thing, you want to move him ahead of those guys. I get it. I want to see what Jacksonville looks like when they have a real offense. I feel like it's been, especially last season, it was just, let's throw it to Brian Thomas. He had 133 targets. Let's throw it to him as much as we can. What is this going to look like with Liam Cohen? Is he going to be Mike Evans, or are we going to see more to Evan Ingram? Christian Kirk is going to be back. The run game has to be better. So I don't know. I have him at 8, but I think he's in a tier with those 4 guys right there. So I don't think it's insane that you have him at 4. And I also don't think that it's crazy that I have him at 8. What are your overall thoughts on BTJ here?
Yeah, I mean, Neighbors and Thomas are both awesome. And I have a hard time differentiating between the two in terms of dynasty value, Boggs. I guess the reason I give Thomas the edge, much better quarterback situation than Neighbors. And who knows when the Giants are going to resolve that, how they're going to resolve it. If they get one of these guys in the draft, what if the rookie quarterback doesn't pan out? So, and while I understand the different offense with Liam Cohen coming in could change the calculus and maybe possibly take a few targets away from Brian Thomas, I do think, I find it hard to think that the arrival of Liam Cohen can be a bad thing.
Oh, yeah.
For Brian Thomas.
I agree with that.
So,
I think the offense has to raise because Urban Meyer was a joke, and I didn't particularly like what Doug Peterson did either. So I think you're right about that for sure.
Yeah. But I do think this tier with the 2 LSU guys, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, really tight. That is a tight bunch. Amon-Ra's the one guy I'm kind of intrigued by, Boggs, in that I'm not quite sure how to value him anymore. He had a career high 12 touchdowns this past year. But even so, his PPR scoring average dropped from 13.4 points per game in 2023 to 11.8 points per game in 2024. That's because his targets per game dropped from 10.3 to 8.3, a 3-year low for Amon-Ra in targets per game. It helped that he caught 81.6% of his targets last year. That's just a freakish catch rate. His catch rate in each of the previous 2 seasons had been 72.6%, which is still really, really good. I worry that the emergence of Jameson Williams is going to be kind of a problem for Amon-Ra's value, or at least for his target rate. Like, I don't know if he gets back over 10 in targets per game with Jameson Williams around as long as J-Mo is healthy. So, yeah, and plus, I don't think the departure of Ben Johnson is that great for Amon-Ra either.
Yeah, I think Amon-Ra he's a pretty good floor player. I think that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Is he's going to have a lot of catches. They're going to score a lot. So the touchdowns are going to be there. Obviously 12, like you said, career high, but what's this floor? 7, 8, something like that. So
sure.
I understand what you're saying. And this is, maybe the future for a guy like Brian Thomas, right? Is that we have more pieces to work with, so we work with more pieces, and you don't get everything. Same thing could happen to Malik Nabers if they decide to add some talent there. You don't fear this for a guy like Chase because they have other talent there. T. Higgins is, we'll talk about him in a little bit. Justin Jefferson has Addison next to him and TJ Hawkinson, right? We know what his floor is. Maybe CeeDee Lamb, but whoever they add is not going to be in CeeDee Lamb's neighborhood. So the targets are still there. Amon-Ra, I understand the trepidation with him. And I think Puka comes with injury concerns from college. Nico missed time this year and CJ Stroud took a step back. So there are little nitpicky things, I think, with all of these guys. So, I would understand Amon-Ra being at the bottom of the tier, but Jared Goff is consistent. I think they're going to be okay, even losing Ben Johnson, and whatever offense you build, he's your one, I feel like. So that's why I'm not too worried, but I understand, we're trying to find nits to pick with these top guys. The right. Talent is insane. Number 9 is AJ Brown. I don't really know that we need to talk too much about AJ Brown, but we got a lot of questions about him on our Tuesday, Q&A on the Discord here. So AJ Brown, obviously getting a little bit older, made the recent comments about a championship's not enough. I want to dominate statistically. He has been a well-known crybaby. 67 catches for him. He did miss 4 games. Would be the lowest of this group. 7 touchdowns, but still, the average is there. He's still the number 1 in Philly and still a threat to make a huge play at any point. Is it time to maybe search for a trade partner in the offseason for AJ Brown? Or are you kind of holding pat with him?
I think I'm holding right now just because I worry that I would not get the value from an AJ Brown trade that I would want, Boggs. Because after 2 straight 1,400-yard seasons, he finished with just under 1,100 yards in a year where the Eagles were by far the run-heaviest team in the league. And I mean, they were freakishly run-heavy, like old school 1970s college football run-heavy.
You have to be with that line.
And with
Barkley.
And as good as that defense was this year, Boggs, that put the Eagles in a lot of run-friendly game scripts. Like, they were not playing from behind very often this past season. So maybe that's going to be the case again, but it's funny how things in the NFL just never seem to repeat. Maybe the injury bug catches up with the Eagles this year, or maybe Saquon gets hurt and they can't run as much. You never know. And AJ Brown is still only 27 years old. Like, he's kind of at career peak. So I feel like his value is kind of at low ebb, but he's still extremely valuable. And I just wouldn't want to get 80 cents on the dollar for AJ Brown trading him now.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a tough spot. It's got to be one of those Godfather deals, right? To trade AJ Brown. It's got to be an offer you can't refuse. So I'm with you there. Any notes before we jump to the next 10 on JSN, because he is in your top 10. He's 12 to me, so still a wide receiver 1, but not in my top 10. And 14 in FPECR. So you're a little bit of the high man here. So your thoughts on JSN and why he deserves to be in the top 10 here?
Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown in training, basically. I mean, like, he looked that good this past year. Like, I seeing is believing, Boggs. Like, the numbers improved dramatically, and like, he balled out. He looked fantastic. So, I'm good with him in the top 10. I just don't think he's quite on the tier with Nico, Puka, Amon-Ra, the LSU guys. Sure. But like, he is still a building block, and early 20s. Wheels up for Jaxon Smith-Njigba.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me about him is, like, if they go away from Geno, who is the backup? Because I know they love Sam Howell, and I talked about that last year, but he looked miserable. Wasn't put in the best spot to succeed, but he looked awful. So, however
do you think they love him? Do you think Seattle loves him? I think they have to be concerned that he is not the heir apparent to Geno Smith.
I think they did I don't know if they do now.
Yeah.
Like you
He's
said,
terrible,
seeing is
man.
believing, and he was awful. So, yeah, I think you're right. So they need to make a plan for the future. But he's a guy that can play with bad quarterbacks and be okay. He just really needed Lockett to get out of the way, and Lockett did. So, before we go to the next group, let me tell you guys about Reality Sports Online. By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. If you think it sounds complicated, it's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. That's it. Think you're among the fantasy elite? This is the platform to test your mettle. If you're still not sure, you can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use the promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, Fitzy, 11 to 20 in our consensus. It was Ladd McConkey at 11, Drake London at 12, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 13, Garrett Wilson at 14, T. Higgins at 15, Odunze at 16, Jordan Addison at 16, Odunze at 17, Zay Flowers at 18, McMillan, the first rookie on our list, at 19, and DeVonta Smith at 20. So, Ladd and Drake, I think, are just easy leaders of this group. You put them in the tier with JSN, I'm sure. Probably with Harrison and Wilson too, right? Is that a tier of JSN, Ladd, Drake, Harrison, Garrett?
So I've got a tier with like AJ Brown, JSN, Ladd, Drake, Marvin Harrison Jr., and I don't have Garrett Wilson on that tier, but he very easily could be.
Okay, so he's kind of like a tweener in that tier.
Yes.
I mean, Drake London just looks so much better with a real offensive coordinator in there, and that they didn't even get the good quarterback play until the back half of the season. So I think there's still a lot of meat on the bone for Drake London. Ladd just proved himself in the end, especially in that playoff game against Houston. Had a huge game, just a clear number one. The talent is insane. So, any of these guys in that tier that you mentioned, those could all be guys that are wide receiver ones on a fantasy team. They just need a little bit of a bump. That's all.
Yeah. And you have Ladd ranked higher than Jaxon Smith-Njigba, correct?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just because I think he is the clear-cut number one option on the offense right now. Like in Seattle, you still have Ken Walker, you have Charbonnet, you have DK Metcalf, right? So JSN may fluctuate in game to game. There's not much else in LA. They're going to have to add talent. I expect them to. There's been all the mocks are a weapon. It's either Loveland, a wide receiver. Omari and Hampton has been mocked to the Chargers a bunch, right? So it's a weapon. I just think Ladd is he's going to get that Malik Neighbors type of volume this season because they just don't have anybody else with him.
What if they sign one of these veteran outside guys? What if they get Davante Adams or Amari Cooper? Would that affect your ranking of Ladd at all?
Not really, because this was his first year and he looked so good. We expect a second year for wide receivers. I mean, look at the step that JSN took from year 1 to year 2, right? And what if we get that from Ladd? And, we know what the Chargers are. They're going to be a play defense and run the ball a lot and throw the ball when they need to type of team. But Justin Herbert is a guy that can uncork it. And I think he's going to be the number one regardless of what they add for a while there. And Justin Herbert's a great quarterback. Team context is great. There's just not a lot of downside to Ladd right now.
Agreed. And it's probably a good thing if they add some talent at outside receiver and take a little attention away from Ladd. But man, the guy just gets open so easily. Like watching that guy work, he is an artist with the route running. Like he is kind of the new Keenan Allen. Maybe
and
just
with
a guy
in
who
his
can
hands.
Yeah, like how do the Chargers keep getting these slot guys who can get open at will? Like
Yeah,
Keenan Allen, Ladd is kind of in the same ilk. Like,
no fall off at all from losing Keenan Allen going to Ladd McConkey. So great pickup for them. I think the biggest guy to talk about in this group, Fitzy, has to be MHJ, Marvin Harrison Jr., because, he came in as the number one with a bullet. You and I both had him at 1. Malik was on his heels. Brian Thomas wasn't in there, though. And now Brian Thomas is, between you and me, he's 1.5 because I still have Malik ahead of him, but I have him obviously ahead of MHJ now. So is this too much of a dip for Marvin Harrison, or is this an appropriate dip for what he showed this year?
Yeah, I've wrestled with this, Boggs, and whether I should have him in the top 10 or not, because I did love him as a prospect. I might not be giving him enough credit, but I did not love the way the Cardinals and offensive coordinator Drew Petzing used him last year. MHJ's average depth of target was 13.4 yards, Boggs. And in comparison, Jamar Chase's 8.7. And it's not like the Bengals weren't throwing deep to Jamar Chase. They most certainly were. But, get some easy completions to this guy, please. He is an alpha receiver. I want to see some, throws within 5 to 8 yards of the line of scrimmage and let Harrison work after the catch, man. And the Cardinals might add another receiver, which is a concern. What if they decide they need to go out and get a real slot receiver instead of trying, Zay Jones and Greg Dortch? So
how many games, real quick, Fitzy?
Yeah.
How many games did MHJ have 10 or more targets last year?
Oh, man. I want to say 4?
3.
3.
3.
Yikes. That's terrible.
He went over 100 yards how many times?
Also 3.
Twice.
Oh, man.
96 yards once. But, he was under 65 yards in every other game but those 2 and then the 96-yard one. So,
yeah, this guy's a little lifter, man. Stop using him as some designated field stretcher. He's not a vertical take the top off him guy. He is an alpha receiver. He should be used at every level of the field. He should be getting targets all over the place.
Yeah, you're right. And it would seem like him and Kyler didn't have it put together either. So we need to see a big jump to get him in that top 10, I think. And, like you said, I think the most important thing in this show, seeing is believing. We just did not see it from MHJ and this offense. It's not all on him, but, the other guys were successful. Garrett Wilson at 14, I think is pretty standard. Doesn't matter to me who comes in at quarterback. It would be better if you got a good quarterback, obviously. But we saw him with a bad quarterback play this year, and he was fine. He was not fine, but he was still okay. The floor is still there for him.
Yeah, it just still wasn't. He had a better quarterback than he had with Zach Wilson, but then DeVonta Adams comes in, and DeVonta Adams is Aaron Rodgers' guy. So it just, it wasn't destined to be for Wilson as far as being the alpha. But remember that game this past year where he did get 16 or 17 targets and went just nuclear? Yeah. I would love to see him just be the focal point of that passing game with some sort of competent quarterback. But obviously the Jets quarterback situation right now is a big mystery.
23 targets against the Vikings.
Oh, that's what it was. 23. Oh my goodness.
23, 13 catches for 101 yards. Didn't have a game with, he had 4 other games with 11 targets in one and then 10 targets in the other 3. Didn't go back to him like that again. So, I just don't understand what was happening in New York last year. Nobody does. Let's just crumple it up and throw it in the trash and know they're going to be in better hands this year, right? So Garrett Wilson still supremely talented. I have him one spot. I have Harrison at 14. I have Wilson one spot ahead of him. You have it flipped. The Ohio State guys are really good. Let's talk about T. Higgins, because the talk is they're going to franchise him, which would pay him over $26 million this year. But I think it's more of a, we will choose to franchise you if we can't work out a deal. What are your thoughts on Higgins moving? Maybe it's a sign and trade. And obviously he's roadblocked by Chase on the ceiling. So your just overarching thoughts on Higgins.
It's not great for 2026, or excuse me, for 2025, but it would assure him of hitting free agency in 2026. And so, yeah, if they locked him up to a multi-year deal in Cincinnati, I would want to move him down further than wide receiver 15 in Dynasty. Only 1 year. I'm okay with having him still as kind of a high-end wide receiver too.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You would want to see him go and, be an alpha somewhere. And he really is. And this is what I've said about T. Higgins in the past is you can't think of him as a 2. He's like a 1B, if you want to call him that, because Jamar Chase is obviously insane. But this is an elite level talent for sure. 109 targets, only played 12 games, still 73 catches and 10 scores. So Higgins is a monster. It's just we won't see all the monster because Jamar Chase is the roadblock. Right after him, it's Addison and Odunze. And boy, I thought maybe let's catch the discount on Odunze this year. We ain't getting it. Maybe in public opinion, we have gotten it. Still very young, an 0-2 guy, so 23 years old. You have him at 16. I have him at 19. His FP average ECR is 19. But I've said everywhere I can, I think you should go acquire this guy. And if you need a story, go look and see what happened with JSN this year, right? As soon as you get that roadblock out of his way and Tyler Lockett, he goes off and now he's a potential top 12 wide receiver to both of us. And Odunze has that in him. He got comparisons to Larry Fitzgerald from some of these sources going into the draft. So I'm still very high on Odunze. You're even higher than I am. And this is like my number one target to try to go acquire in the offseason while people are kind of down on him, because I think this is it. You ain't getting this discount again.
3 reasons to be optimistic, Boggs. 1, no more Keenan Allen. 2, the arrival of Ben Johnson in Chicago. 3, hopefully improvement for Caleb Williams. And it does seem like, if Hard Knocks is any indication, that Caleb Williams and Odunze seem to get along and like each other.
Right.
And the chemistry is building, and hopefully we see more of it. So, I think back to that terrible Thursday night game where the Seahawks beat the Bears 6-3. But there was one moment in that game, Boggs, late, where the Bears were trying to move ahead, and maybe this was when they got the 3, but they were in Seattle territory. Caleb is scrambling around and throws an absolute dot on the move to Odunze in the end zone for a touchdown, called back by a holding penalty.
I feel like we saw 14 of those in the preseason and like 3 in the regular season. That was kind of crazy.
Yeah. So I do think there's something good brewing with these two. And the rookie year wasn't as exciting, especially when you've got the LSU guys going bonkers, Ladd McConkey going bonkers, and then Odunze, a top 10 pick, just kind of there, kind of a complimentary guy.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see more from him in 2025.
I think in ECR, in our opinions, he has lost no value, not much at all. So, but I think court of public opinion in your league, maybe somebody is down on Odunze. So go and try to acquire him. Last 3 guys here: Zay, Tet, DeVonta. I mean, Zay is obviously a number 1. DeVonta could move up if something happens with A.J. Brown getting traded, and obviously he shows up in the big moments. Biggest wide receiver in the Super Bowl, the NFC Championship, the Super Bowl they lost. Like DeVonta, just the national championship, he caught that game-winning touchdown from Tua, right? He shows up when he needs to, the team for sure. For fantasy, I think there's still a lot left to be desired. He did have 8 touchdowns, which is great, but he didn't cross 1,000 yards, 68 receptions on 89 targets. They run a lot. So I think it caps his upside, but DeVonta's talent, I think, is within a lot of these guys here. So tell us about any of those three: Zay, Tet, and DeVonta.
Yeah, I mean, Zay is really good. I just don't know how much room there is for him to get more than the 116 targets he had last season. Yeah. Boggs. I mean, maybe there is, but what happens if the Ravens add another receiver?
Right. And that was with, that was with Mark Andrews starting off real bad.
Yes.
They didn't have a number 2. They were mainly running the ball with Derrick Henry and throwing it to Zay. So it was like, Isaiah likely had that huge week 1. So they have other weapons, but he's their guy. But him and DeVonta, both pretty good options on run-heavy teams.
Yes. And I also want to circle back real quick to Jordan Addison. Please. Good to see him up here because, there's some questions. Like he has to share targets with Justin Jefferson and now a fully healthy TJ Hawkinson. We don't know what J.J. McCarthy is going to show us at quarterback next year. He's just so good, Boggs.
Yes.
I mean, he is just really freaking good. And
remember when there were arguments between him and QJ? Not anymore, right?
Yeah, not at all. And Addison just turned 23. So even though the situation is a little bit murky for 2025, this guy has a long runway on his career. And eventually, I think he is going to go somewhere where he is the number 1 receiver. And he's just a star in the making. He is a fantastic football player.
Before we go to the next group, give me a team where Tet could land, where you boost him, and a team where he could land, where you drop him.
I wouldn't want to see him go to Dallas.
Okay.
I've heard talk about him going there. Man, I'd be he's not going to fall to the Packers, but what if they traded up for him? I'd be pretty excited about him all of a sudden being the undisputed alpha for Jordan Love. That wouldn't be bad. What about, is there a dream Tet McMillan landing spot for you?
Kind of like New Orleans, especially with Olave being somewhat questionable in his future, right? I think they need an alpha. So I think Tet would fit well there. Just anywhere that's kind of needy, I think would be a good spot for him. But I think Dallas, where you're capped, I think, you're right. It's probably that this rank is going to change based on where he ends up for sure. Before we get into the next tier, let me remind you guys to join the Fantasy Pros Discord community, chat with other fans, and get access to exclusive AMAs and that wind up on our podcast feed. Here's our current schedule. Worm and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of each month, and then Fitz and myself at 5 Eastern on the third Tuesday of each month. Come and get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. All right, we'll pick up the pace here a little bit. 21 to 30 here, Fitzy. It's DK Metcalf, George Pickens at 22. We have a pretty solid difference there. That's our first big one, or second outside of Brian Thomas. 23 is Jaylen Waddle. 24 is DJ Moore. Then Rashee Rice, Jameson Williams, Xavier Worthy at 27, Jerry Jeudy at 28, Terry McLaurin at 29, and then Tyreek Hill at number 30. The biggest one we have a difference on in this group is Pickens. I can't believe I'm higher on Pickens than most people because I don't like him. He's a Steeler, right? But I hate this. I am so sick of the diva wide receiver on my team. It's Antonio Brown. It's Plexico. It's Mike Williams. I mean, it's all of these guys. So I am sick of it. Pickens is the epitome of it. I've said this before. He's a net gain for the team for sure, right? He's not punching guys like Deontay was. He's not a total cancer. He's just dumb. I don't know how else to describe it, but the talent, ridiculous. He's made unbelievable sideline catches. When the effort is in there, he is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. So my ranking is based on, let's just see him grow up. Let's see him grow up and become a real pros pro. And the talent is undeniable and unbelievable. So I just think that there's a lot there left for him to show, and he's already shown a lot. So this is a ranking based on what I've seen, and I've seen a lot of Pickens. So, and I was excited about him coming out. But yeah, the attitude. I could do without that.
I don't know if he's, if he qualifies as dumb in terms of brain power, Bugs, but he does do dumb things on the field and says some dumb things in interviews or just like he's immature. He's really immature. And it's too bad because like if this guy gets his head on straight, man, he is what an acrobat George Pickens is. Like he is one of the most acrobatic receivers in the league and just this masterful contested catch artist. Like he's so much fun to watch. But there's a lot
of questions, Fitz. Who is
quarterback?
Who's the quarterback? Who are they putting next to him? Who's the alpha running back? Najee's a free agent. Jaylen Warren's not built to handle 25 touches. So what do they do at that spot? How long is Mike Tomlin on, with this team and Arthur Smith for that matter? So there are a million questions. I understand. I think 25 seems pretty poignant. Like that's like you are not a wide receiver 2. Is that kind of the idea with Pickens because of the unknown and the immaturity?
Yeah. I mean, I might be too low, but he is not a guy I really feel like going out and acquiring right now especially with this offense very much in limbo as far as who the skill position personnel will be in 2025.
And his ECR is 27. So I'm definitely high on him and you're more regular on him. So it's just, I know the talent's in there. It's putting it all together. Anything on DK Metcalf or Jaylen Waddle at the top here?
I'm higher than most people on DK Metcalf, and I actually think he's a good buy low target. I mean, Metcalf turned 27 in December. In fact, we share a birthday, DK Metcalf, and I've got a few years on him.
You were 29?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, he's still a young man, but like he fell 8 yards short of the 1,000-yard mark and had a career low 5 touchdowns this past year.
And it seemed like he was playing through stuff a lot.
Yeah, he was playing through stuff, and we had the Jaxon Smith-Njigba breakout, and yet like Metcalf averaged 9.2 yards per target, which is still really good. Like he's a very good player still. And I think maybe the price is as low as it's going to be. I don't know, maybe like you're not going to get top dollar for him in the trade market because he's starting to get older. He's at his peak.
Is he the best buy outside of Odunze to you?
I think he is one of them. And you're not getting any sort of discount on Odunze. You can get a discount on DK Metcalf.
Now we have Jaylen Waddle at 23. You're 22. I'm 23. We have Tyreek at 30. You're 29. I'm 30. So, I mean, Tyreek did back off of his, I got to get out of here. He was just frustrated at the end of the year. He came out and said that. I'll give him props for that. Stupid thing to say at the end of the season to cause all of this drama. But then he went on national television and backed off of it. So I'll give him credit for it. And if he keeps having kids, he's not going to be able to retire anytime soon like he wants to. Jaylen Waddle is another one of these guys. We mentioned T. Higgins, Jordan Addison, dudes that are capped by a stud next to them. Tyreek did not have a good year, though. So Jaylen Waddle had an okay year with that. What are your thoughts on Jaylen Waddle? Because this year was thoroughly unimpressive. 58 catches, 744 yards, and 2 scores. Just could not get in the end zone, obviously. It was a big issue. So, and Tua, another guy, how long is he going to be there? And if he's not there, are we looking at a new system and a new coach? I mean, there's a lot going on in Miami right now.
I would guess Miami's going to be in the market for a backup quarterback, either in free agency or the draft, something, because they were completely shipwrecked when Tua sat out and missed games with the concussion, and that affected Waddle's numbers, Boggs. So I think Waddle's another good buy low. Like, this dude had the most yards per route run in college football since 2020, which includes guys like Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb. Waddle was the 6th overall pick of the 2021 draft. He launched his NFL career with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Like, Jaylen Waddle is a really, really good player who just kind of had things conspire against him in 2024. So again, another spot where if the market is soft on him, I'm looking to pounce.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a great acquisition here. We're a little bit higher than ECR, both of us. You're higher than I am, but he's definitely a wide receiver too, no matter what type of league you're in. So I'm all about Waddle. The rest of the guys here, I think Rashee Rice to me is like one of the hardest to rank because he's coming off the knee injury, which is massive, and he has a suspension looming. That's not going to affect him all the way through. The knee is the more concerning of these two things, but you also could miss a big chunk of this year with him. It could be 8 games. It could be 6 games. I mean, these suspensions seem somewhat random, Fitzy. So what are your thoughts on Rice?
Oh, I don't think you even mentioned the biggest concern with Rashee Rice, Boggs, and that is the emergence of Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs late in the season. In Worthy's last 6 games, so the last 3 regular season games he played, which doesn't include week 18 when everyone was sitting out, and the Chiefs' 3 playoff games, Worthy averaged 6.7 catches and 79.5 yards per game.
And how about a Super Bowl?
Great in the Super Bowl, 6 touchdowns over those 6 games, including a touchdown run. Like, I think Worthy's emergence is going to be a problem for Rice's value going forward. And right now I have Rice ranked ahead of Worthy. I have to flip-flop that. Like,
I think so too. I have him actually no, I have Worthy 1 spot ahead of Rice. So that was poignant as well. So
yeah, I'm gonna switch him right now. I've got Rice 4 spots ahead of Worthy. I think I'm just gonna shuffle those 2 and have Worthy 4 spots ahead of Rice.
2 quick questions before we move on here.
Sure.
Jeudy ahead of McLaurin. How much are we buying Judy's pop? And is that something that's going to stick for you?
I'm kind of buying it. I'm not saying I'm 100% right on this, Boggs. We know it was somewhat Jameis related.
And he's 3.5 years younger than McLaurin. So there is a big age gap.
Yeah, Judy's still, exactly. He's still only 25. And it seemed like the light bulb finally went on for him this past year. I mean, Jeudy looked really, really good. And I was excited about him coming out of college, Boggs, because his special sauce came in 2 flavors, ranch and blue cheese. No, he was an exceptional route runner and exceptional after the catch. And we finally saw both of those things in play in 2024. Like, I thought he had been majorly disappointing up to this year. And I was ready to write him off, and he totally made me do a 180 on him.
Yeah, and Denver and Cleveland, not exactly the best QB situations for a wide receiver either.
True.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm buying it a little bit more than I was in the middle of it because it was extended. But I don't know. Like, trading for Jerry Jeudy would make me a little queasy, I guess I should say.
I get it, because Jameis is the turbo boost. He is like the performance enhancing drug for wide receivers. Stick Jameis into the lineup and everyone is a star. Cedric Tillman.
Also for cornerbacks. Yeah.
Yeah. And for cornerbacks. Yes. Everyone catches balls with Jameis at quarterback, including defensive backs. So yes.
Yeah. He was better interviewing people at the Super Bowl, I think, than he was at a quarterback. He was outstanding. Let's talk about the next group here. 31 to 40. We've got Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka at 31 and 32. And we both have them ranked exactly there. So no difference. FP also has them exactly there. Brandon Ayuk at 33, then Keon Coleman at 34, Jaden Reed at 35, Chris Olave at 36, Josh Downs at 37, 38 is Khalil Shakir, 39 is Mike Evans, and 40 is Cortland Sutton. I mean, we could talk about everybody in this tier, but let's hear about, I think the group of 34, 35, 36 is the most interesting. Coleman, Reed, and Olave, because I think in skill, it's no question, Olave is the best by a lot. So many concussions, though. It's like 5 concussions in the last 3 years. I don't know how to extend out or expect his playing time to go moving forward. So I have him pretty low. I have him at 40. You have him at 34. Jaden Reed, you have a 33. I have a 39. I mean, just he kept getting pulled off the field. He was getting like 50% snap shares at the end of the season. I hated to see that. They have so many guys, and they're talking about potentially drafting someone as well. So there's a lot for Jayden Reed to unpack. And then Keon Coleman, you have a 35. I have a 36. This FPECR is 45. So we're just not letting it die. We're thinking, okay, Cooper's gone. Keon Coleman showed flashes this year. Let's see that JSN bump into the next season. So we're both there on Keon Coleman, maybe a little foolishly, but we were both buying in last year. We're not going after a bad rookie year. We're not getting rid of him. So your thoughts on those three guys?
Yeah, I mean, Keon Coleman did give us little, looked like a George Pickens on training wheels, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like he's another kind of acrobat, and he just needs more targets, and maybe he gets more of a chance next year. Jayden Reed, he only reached 50 receiving yards once in his last 9 games, including the playoffs. But over his first 9 games of the season, he was averaging 68.9 receiving yards per game. And if you factor in his rushing yardage, Boggs, where he was adding 12 rushing yards a game, he was averaging 81 yards from scrimmage per game. So and he's always been a 60%, 70% snap share guy, but it hasn't mattered because when he's been on the field, they have usually Matt LaFleur has endeavored to get him the ball. That kind of stopped happening when the Packers got really, really run heavy down the stretch. So I do think Reed is a talented.
How many games was he under 60% snap share last year?
Oh man. I mean, there were probably half a dozen at least.
10.
Wow.
10 games under 60. That the talent is there. Jayden Reed is great. And you're right. They design ways to get him the football. I think Jayden Reed's the guy that can fluctuate my rankings as well. They go out and draft your boy, Alec, or somebody else. They move up to get a guy like Tet. I think Jayden Reed has to come down. But if they kind of stand pat, then I'm gonna bump him up for sure, probably closer to where you have him. I just really don't like that usage. I think they need to fix it. I think it needs to be deliberate. They need to talk about it this year.
Agreed. And I do think it matters who they add. You know, if they draft a receiver in the first round, that's one thing. If they can wait until the third round and get Jack Besh or someone like that, then I'm not as concerned for Reed. What about Ayuk, Boggs? Where are you at with him? He was having a really bad start to the season before the injury. Only got to 50 receiving yards once in the 7 games he played, 0 touchdowns. Catch rate was barely 50%. And even if the 49ers do trade Debo, Ayuk has to fight for targets with George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Juwan Jennings, and Ricky Pearsall, who looked sensational the last 2 weeks of the regular season.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Did you say Jennings in there too?
I did say, I mentioned Jennings also.
There's a lot of in CMC could come back, right? There's a lot to go around here. I think you could see it from the whole Niners team. That Super Bowl run crushed them, right? It just did. Their playoff run gave them a lot of injuries this season. Nothing seemed to be in sync early. And then when it did get rolling, everybody got hurt at the end. So I'm not taking this season and crumpling it up and throwing it in the trash and ignoring it completely. But I have a little bit of that in me. I think that Ayuk is still an unbelievable route runner. So if this injury didn't ruin him, I think he's going to come back and perform well. I think he's still going to be a pretty good wide receiver and prove that he's the best wide receiver on this team. Pearsall may have something to say about that. Yes. And that's fine. And I'm pretty high on Pearsall too when we get to his ranking. But I still think Ayuk has a lot of value. And he's a guy that could get moved too. I mean, they talked about moving him, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think they did give him the extension, right? So probably not. But there are teams that are desperate, and many teams reached out last year. So maybe if the cost is cheaper in terms of the draft pick, then that could happen. I'm higher on Mike Evans, not a surprise to anybody. I've been a Mike Evans stan. I think he should have got the Heisman over Johnny Manziel. And I also think that he is just almost Derrick Henry-esque, and he's a freak. And when he decides to leave, it'll be on his terms. And he's just still a stud.
Are you a little, so obviously like not that many years for Evans left. Are you concerned if Godwin re-signs with the Buccaneers and they've got Jalen McMillan?
No, because those guys are, they have one role. So, and Mike Evans is the number one, regardless of who else is there. So, and Baker loves him. So 2 huge years, because, I like to operate my dynasty in a 3-year window. So 2 huge years, I think, is more than enough for me to still be on the Mike Evans hype train here.
Sell me on Josh Downs, since you're about 7 spots higher than I am.
Okay. The thing here is that he's the only guy that Anthony Richardson was getting the football to when he was out there. And he had the injury, he came back, and he performed so well at the end of the year. I think we're seeing him start to take a little bit of a next step here. And I'm still a Pittman guy, right? I still love Pittman, but I had to put Downs ahead of him because he is Anthony Richardson's favorite target. We saw down the stretch, his last game, 13 targets, 10 catches, 94 yards, 8 targets. Not a lot of these were being completed, remember. 61 yards, then 22, then 32, but 10 for 7 and 72 when he came back. So I just think that if they get this rolling, even if they don't get this rolling, I think Josh Downs is the one guy on this team with a floor because Richardson doesn't like throwing to the outside. So we're not getting the ball to Pittman. We're not getting the ball to Pierce or Adonai. We're throwing the ball to the tight ends. We're throwing the ball to the running back. We're throwing the ball to Josh Downs. So I think no matter what happens in terms of improvement for Richardson, Downs is still going to be decent. So that's why I have him pretty high.
Yeah, I guess I'm disinclined to go for guys from the Jamison Crowder phylum, the tiny slot guy. Like I always kind of fade the tiny slot guys, and I know Josh Downs is better than Jamison Crowder ever was, but the Richardson thing is kind of a problem because his ceiling is probably league average passer, and I think the Colts would sign up for him becoming a league average passer in a heartbeat. But for a while, he's still probably going to be a below league average passer, and I think
with that arm, the upside is still there.
It's about no question.
It's about getting, everything experience. Really, it's experience and on field. So hopefully we see a big jump from A-Rich. But like I said, even if we don't, I think Downs has a pretty good floor in that offense. Going from 41 to 50 here, Fitzy, it's your boy, Alec Manor at 41. Then 42 is Michael Pittman. 43 is Debo. 44 is Chris Godwin. We have Ricky Pearsall at 45. Jalen McMillan at 46. DeVonta at 47. Matthew Golden, another rookie, at 48. 49 is Travis Hunter. And 50 is Darnell Mooney. Travis Hunter is just, this is if he plays wide receiver. And if he does play wide receiver, he's going to be much higher than this. We expect him to play cornerback.
Yep.
Rotate in at wide receiver. So we won't spend much time talking about him. We have a big difference here on your boy Manor. I have him at 48, which is reasonable. A top 4. He's the bottom of my top 4. You have him at 37, which again, poignant. He's my last wide receiver 4. He's your first wide receiver 4. So what are your thoughts on Manor? Is this your man crush of this draft?
Well, Boggs, we expect Travis Hunter to be the first cornerback taken of the draft, and we expect him to play cornerback, and he's a terrific cornerback. In 2023, Manor lit up Travis Hunter for 13 catches, almost 300 yards. I think it was like 293 and 3 touchdowns in a wild comeback win where I think Stanford was down like 29-0 at halftime.
Insane.
Came back and won 46-43 in overtime, and Manor just destroyed Travis Hunter. He's big and strong and likes to block. Like he's just a gamer, man. Like he is an Anquan Bolden type.
Yeah.
And I wrote this in this mock draft article I just did, Boggs. Like the 2 hardest to tackle wide receivers I've ever seen play were Anquan Bolden and Sterling Sharp. And I think Manor could be in that class. Like it takes a posse of defensive backs to try to drag this dude down once he has the ball in his hands.
He's huge.
Yeah, and he's just like, kind of a limited route tree at Stanford, but I think he's like a good enough route runner. I think his hands are good. I like this guy a lot. So yeah, he is kind of one of my flag plant guys in this class.
Yeah, this is a group of like vets like Debo, Godwin, DeVonta, Mooney is in here. I'm higher on Mooney than you are, but then it's all upshots. It's Ayamainer, Pearsall, McMillan, Matthew Golden. So this is kind of the veteran mix here. Who else stands out here? I mean, Ricky Pearsall, you and I both mentioned. I have him at 42. You have him at 47. This is a guy that could get a big spike depending on what the roster looks like going into the year.
Yeah, I gotta move up Pearsall. Boggs.
Think so?
Okay. It was an oversight. Like when we were
one spot below his ECR is 46. So.
I know. I like want him in the next tier higher.
Okay.
He looked so good in the Niners' last 2 games. 8 catches, 141 yards and a touchdown versus the Lions. 6 catches, 69 yards and a touchdown versus the Cardinals. And he just looked the part. And I know the target picture.
I was so low on him last year, Fitzy, and it was never because of the skill. It's because, well, you have Debo, you have Ayuk, you have Kittle, you have CMC. Like, you have so many of these weapons in front of him, and they all died last year. And he got to prove it at the end of the year and was huge.
And Pearsall himself almost died with that shooting. But
Jesus,
for him to come back from that, obviously a strange start to his career with all the target competition and, that incident. But like the way he finished was really what a definitive statement by him. And I think he's going to be a big part of the 49ers plans going forward.
I think so too. I have Darnell Mooney pretty high. I'm at 46. I think we saw a nice year from him last year, and that was with some rough QB play from Kirk Cousins to start the year. So I think with Penix and a full off season, I think Mooney did pretty good. He's still fairly young, 97. So going into his year 27 years. So people
who have London and Mooney on their dynasty teams have to be thrilled with the way Penix spun it in his NFL debut. I mean, that dude has got arm talent galore.
He does. And we still want to see Pitts get involved, but I don't know. I'm just convinced that, here comes 2029. I'm still trying to make Pitts happen. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to happen. To round out our 60, I'll give you 51 to 60 here. It's Cooper Kupp, Jacoby Myers, Quentin Johnston, Rashad Bateman, Trey Harris, Marvin Mims, Adonai Mitchell, Jaden Higgins, Romeo Doubs, and Jawan Jennings. I'll just start here. Jawan Jennings is my flip here. You have Cedric Tillman, who just missed at 61. You're high on Tillman. I'm high on Jennings. For me, it was like, I mean, they keep trying to box Jennings out with all these other options, and he just keeps being the leading receiver for the Niners for most of the year. RFA this year, I think he's going to end up back with San Francisco, but we know Debo is likely to get moved. Kittle's slowing down. He's one of Brock Purdy's favorite options. So that's why I like him. Why are you high on Tillman here?
Just because of what we saw. Like, he looked pretty good, like an alpha receiver in the making with Jameis. But again, how much of that is the Jameis juice that every receiver gets, Bog? So again, like, yes, I am sort of high on him, but I'm not going to the mattresses for Cedric Tillman. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not putting together blockbuster deals to try to acquire him. Let me ask you this. What did you make of Marvin Mims' big finish? He had 6 touchdowns over Denver's last 7 regular season games. He averaged 4 catches and 62 yards a game over those last 7 regular season games. And his snap shares, Boggs, in those 7 games were between 23% and 47%. He didn't play half the offensive snaps in any of those games. What if Sean Payton starts giving Mims 60%, 70% of the offensive snaps? Because this dude is still just 22. He turns 23 next month.
Here's the issue. He can never get that amount of snaps. He can't block. He is too rail skinny to do it. I mean, the effort is there. He gets in the way, but it's like, a puppy biting your ankles. He's just not able to do it. So I think that limits his upside. The upside is what we saw at the end of the year, right? Those huge games, but he's so boomer bust. So he can't be higher than a bye week option to me, or like, if he's on a surge, then maybe you're starting him at wide receiver 3 or in a flex spot or something like that. But because I don't think he'll ever see the field at that well over 50% clip of getting 60 or more, I think the upside is limited with him. And also, I think this is a team that could add Loveland. They could add way more to the running game. Obviously, it was inept last season. So I think there is room for growth, but I think Mims' role is pretty stable and it's low usage.
I get it. I think I might bet on the talent, though, Boggs. He's a guy I want to get on at least, I want to trade for him in at least 2 leagues this offseason.
Anybody else in this 51 to 60 you want to talk about here?
I want to ask you about Adonai Mitchell. Where are you on him?
Oh, man. Like, the talent is there. I think we saw some flashes of it, but good God. He's buried.
He is.
It's Pittman, it's Downs, it's Jonathan Taylor, it's
and Alec Pierce.
Had a good year.
Yes.
And we didn't even have him in our top 75. It's probably an oversight by both of us. So, and Richardson's passing woes, right? That's why I like Downs, because Downs is the guy. I don't know what's going on with Adonai Mitchell. I think he'd be better off with another team, but how is that going to happen?
He's a hold, though. He is a solid hold because there were flashes. Like, he looks the part, Boggs. He is big and fast, and man, I'm still hoping that he can develop into something good, because like I really have my doubts about his prospect profile. I feel a lot better about him now, I think, than I did back in like August, September.
Yeah, he had the big game against Buffalo where he had 6 catches for 71 yards, right? That was his huge game. Other than that, obviously mixed in with Richardson and being buried, he had a 4-catch game in there, but that was really the one big one. But yeah, I mean, love the player, don't love the spot. That's pretty much it. Anybody below that you wanted to fight for? Because, I mean, Tank Dell didn't make our top 60. Obviously, the knee injuries. We have some old guys like Allen and Cooper and young guys like Bond and Betch and Leggett and Royals down here. Anybody else you want to go through?
I'm kind of out on Leggett. I didn't see it. I think I'd rather have Jalen Coker at this point, to be totally honest. Yeah, I mean, like, Coker at least kind of flashed as a slot guy. I did not see it with Leggett last year. Like, he's good when he has the ball in his hands, but I just don't think he can ever be a guy like you can count on to get open as a route runner.
I think he needs to be a volume guy. You're right. And
I think he's like a close to the line of scrimmage guy, Boggs. That, like, I think that's his hope that like, give it to him and let him raise hell. And he's not as good after the catch as Debo.
I want to give him one more year before I write him off. But I'm right there with you. Like, he's on the razor's edge. You know what I mean? Because the opportunity is absolutely there. You don't do it in your second year, Carolina's gonna have to spend a bunch of money on the defense. They have to fix the defense. Yeah. Right. You got your quarterback now. You have your number 1 running back. You need a number 2. You need talent outside and a tight end. But they spent last offseason trying to fix the defense and fixing the O-line. O-line was fine. I feel like, still you could use upgrades, but I think the defense really needs to be fixed. And they lost Derek Brown, probably a big chunk of this year as well. Like, I think he's going to get another shot. So I don't want to write him off quite yet, but he could be if they go out and get a wide receiver in the, first, second round. Nah, I'm pushing him down. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've got him in 1 league, Boggs, and I think I'm going to go out and sell him for a bag of almonds.
Yeah,
I might ask for honey roasted almonds, but
maybe we can make that happen. Do you have him in the tags league? Is that where you have him?
I don't think that is the league.
Okay, well, we'll see. I'll be hunting your rosters because I got a fresh bag of almonds here for you. I can use for Leggett. So, but I think that is it. That is it for us today.
Wait, Boggs.
Yes, please.
Before we go, I want to wish our missing co-host Ryan Wormley well in his recovery from shoulder surgery.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, shoulder surgery for Worm. So, Worm, get better. Please, you're much better at hosting than I am. So please come back and do the hosting work here and recover fast. We need you, buddy. So come on back. Yeah, hopefully Worm is fine. We will check in on him for sure. But that is it for us today. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Bogman Sports, for myself at Fitz_FF for Fitzy. And we'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. If you love the show, the best free way to support us is by leaving a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Follow us on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Fantasy Pros, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros.